Good morning. So I'm up and at it, even though I don't feel like it today, but we are going to get in another 24 hours. So today's chapter of Living Clean is called Money. Whether we have a lot of money, whether we have a lot of it or very little, most of us have a challenging relationship to money. There is no one right set of values, but we do have principles that we practice. Our seventh tradition talks about being self-supporting through our own contributions, and while the tradition makes direct reference to the groups, many of us find that practicing the principle in our own lives is essential to experiencing freedom. We learn to support ourselves financially, and we find that there are other ways in which we can practice self-support. We learn to carry our own weight, clean up our own mess, and contribute in the places that are important to us. It can be very hard for us to share about our relationship to money. Sharing honestly about this with our sponsor can open the door to healing in all areas of our lives. Having money and working may be totally unrelated when we get here. We found the financial resources that we needed in our active addiction in all sorts of other ways. We stole, we manipulated, we took advantage, we persuaded others of our entitlement. We were takers and we squandered the resources that were made available to us. In our self-centeredness, we were oblivious to the toll we took on the people around us. The awareness that we might never be able to repay what we owe can be a part of the force that drives us to a new way of life. We owe a debt, and every time we act in the service of a greater good, we can feel something shifting inside us. We have a contribution to make, and making it is not a sacrifice. It serves us at least as much as those we serve. The sense of entitlement that enabled us to live as we did in our addiction can follow us into recovery. Often it shows up in more subtle forms. We don't steal people's purses anymore, but it may seem perfectly reasonable to take supplies from work, to shoplift a little, to continue taking advantage of people. We may know that this kind of dishonesty is wrong, but harbour the sense that we are not being paid what we're worth, that we deserve a break we're not getting, or that the people we serve at work, at home, or in an A should be more grateful than they are. Sometimes it shows up in our distrust of others. We constantly suspect that someone is trying to get over on us. This simmering resentment can be incredibly destructive. We see not what we have, but what we lack. We feel our vulnerability rather than our security. It's hard to be happy when the world feels like a hostile place. Learning to practice faith and gratitude does not mean that we give up our street smarts. It means we start to develop a different kind of intelligence. We can stand up for ourselves without feeling like we are fighting for our lives, and we begin to trust that our needs will be met, and to see the imperfections in our circumstances as opportunities rather than barriers to growth. Even in recovery, obsession and compulsion play out in our spending habits. We shop impulsively and compulsively and get obsessed with having the newest or the best. We use our money unwisely in an attempt to fill the void. We want to buy love, approval, or the appearance of success. I thought I could buy my way out of addiction, said one member. Money becomes one more way to play out our control issues, and we get so rigid that we create more problems than we solve. Or we simply let money and opportunities go by feeling like poverty is probably appropriate for us. Some of us find that it's not stuff that attracts us, but the pursuit. This drive can bring us to great success, or it can be the compulsion that fuels yet another symptom of our addiction. We are the only ones who really know the truth. If we are gambling, working the system, opening and closing businesses, veering from financial success to failure and back again, we might want to take a look at what we're up to. It can be difficult to admit that we have a troubled relationship with money. Sharing honestly with someone we trust can begin the process of change. Financial unmanageability is often a symptom of a larger issue. Like so many things we struggle with, it is a practical problem with a spiritual solution. Very small things one member shared, like paying the bills on time, gave me a feeling of self-worth. Another member shared that she began to overcome her resentment of paying her bills by writing Thank you for your services on her payments. Simply meeting our own obligations can be a victory. For some of us, this resolves quickly. Others spend a lifetime learning to manage. Financial turmoil is not unusual for NA members, but it is not a requirement. Acting out on our disease has financial consequences, but many of the ways we show our recovery have financial consequences too. This doesn't mean that when we are working our program we get rich. Some of us never make as much money in recovery as we did when we were using, and being responsible can be expensive. But many of us find success in recovery and do achieve financial comfort. When we are practicing sanity and living within our means, we can be comfortable with ourselves and our circumstances, no matter what they are. We also learn to ask for help when we need it. Many of us struggle in recovery when we become sick or disabled because our beliefs about being self-supporting make it hard to seek the assistance we may desperately need. The humility we learn from working the steps allows us to ask for help when necessary, and to know that we are neither too good to have needs or too bad to deserve a hand. We may find that what we want is very different from what we need, and learning to adapt to our circumstances can give us a flexibility that we hadn't imagined before. We learn to accept help and find other ways to contribute as well. Losing everything isn't a life sentence, just as having it all doesn't mean we will not be in need again. Prudence is a principle some of us practice more than others. It's a funny word, but it's what we are talking about when we refer in service to a prudent reserve. A member shared, I learned to be responsible and prudent with NA funds so I don't misappropriate other people's funds either. I have learned the principles of honesty and accountability. It is part of walking my talk and applying the principles. In service, we learn to take on obligations thoughtfully to ensure that we can follow through on what we've promised in other areas of our lives as well. We find that planning and following through makes us feel good about ourselves. We do our best to ensure that we can be responsible even if our circumstances change. I went through a hard time in my business and had to live off my savings for a while. I was ashamed to talk about it in meetings, but I shared with a fellow addict. Later he told me that this was a message of hope for him. Because I planned ahead, I was able to make it through a tough time. What I saw as a failure, he saw as a success. One more time, I gained a better perspective on my life. We also notice in NA that those who do not give it away tend not to keep it. The idea that giving is a crucial part of having is something many of us are surprised to discover. We may or may not have material wealth, but our emotional, spiritual and mental resources are enormous. We have a wealth of experience. When we give our energy, time, talent and creativity, we are rewarded many times over. Excellent, well done. When I say well done, that's a good reading. So I meant to say, this is Living Clean. And remember, just for today, we do not pick up no matter what. Get your head on the pillow clean tonight, and do not worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about next week. Don't worry about next year. Just get through today without picking up a single drink or drug. That's it. I'll leave it there.